Imagine showing up for work tomorrow and finding the office dark, your email inbox paused, the parking garage locked and dark, no security. Welcome to the U.S. federal government on vacation without asking. Every few years, something weird happens in Washington, D.C. The government just, it stops. Not because aliens invade or there was a power outage, but because Congress forgot to pay for it. And yet somehow many of the people who work there still get paid. This is not a feature film. This is American democracy in motion. Today we're going to walk through the history of government shutdowns, how this odd ritual got started, how it works, and why it keeps happening. And what does that say about our system? So let's begin, as they always say, at the beginning. So why does government shutdowns happen? Because it has to be funded. The U.S. Constitution grants Congress the power of the purse strings, the money. Over time, the federal budget process became a sprawling annual choreography, 12 appropriation bills, dozens of agencies, thousands of projects. But here's the kicker. The fiscal year starts for the federal government on October 1st. So if they don't have continuing resolution bills or appropriation bills by midnight, September 30th, parts of the government just stops. They can't spend any more money. Now, until the 1980s, early 1980s, a funding gap when Congress didn't pass formal appropriation did not always mean the government shut down. Agencies usually just kept running as status quo, but then something changed. In 1981, Attorney General Benjamin Cavetti issued a legal opinion interpreting the Anti-Deficiency Act of 1884, so 100 years beforehand, to mean the agencies must cease operations in the funding lapse unless explicitly authorized by the Congress. In short, before the 80s, a budget gap didn't mean full stop. But after this opinion, that's how government learned to stop working and get paid later. So let's go through the early years. The first official shutdowns, or partial ones, began in the early Reagan era. For example, one in 1981 saw hundreds of thousands of employees furloughed. So go home, don't work. These were relatively short, just a couple of days here or there, but they set precedent. If Congress fails to act, parts of the government turns off. Why so short? Because political incentives still favored resolution. Getting blamed for closing the government was bad optics. And the parties didn't have such rigid bases demanding no compromise, at least not yet. But then, by the mid-90s, things changed. The pattern got longer, nastier, and, more difficult to come to an end. The big moment came in the 1995-96 era under Bill Clinton. He had a conflict with the Republican Congress. The government shut down for 21 days between December 95 and January 96. Then another major one in 2013 under Barack Obama, a 16-day shutdown caused by a showdown over Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act. And then the record, December 22nd, 2018 to January 5th, 2019, a full 35 days under Donald Trump. The federal government partially shut down due to a stalemate over funding for the wall that we all remember. So let's zoom into what happens in a shutdown. Non-essential services are halted. National parks close, research grants freeze up, agencies delay hiring. Essential services, military, law enforcement, air traffic controllers, continue, often with workers showing up without pay until funding returns. Furloughs, employees are sent home without pay. Others are required to work with pay delayed. Economically, even a short shutdown can cost billions with a B. In 2013, the CBO estimated the lost growth of the economy at 0.2% of the gross domestic product. That's a lot of money. So the government stopped working, but here's the irony. In the title of our episode, still, they get paid. After the 2018-2019 shutdown ended, Congress passed the Government Employee Fair Treatment Act of 2019, guaranteeing retroactive pay for furloughed workers in future shutdowns. Translation: you don't work, you still get paid. Just later. It's like a layaway plan for your pay. That changes the calculus. When agencies and workers know payback is guaranteed, the shutdown becomes less about immediate pain and more about political theater. Why does this keep happening? Why does the government keep shutting down? Why not just approve the budget and carry on? Because the budget, the shutdown, all of this has become a strategic tool to get people elected and to give them sound bites. Political hostage taking. A party controls one chamber or presidency and uses funding deadline as leverage. The threat: vote our way or watch the parks shut down. So the Republicans have the presidency and the Congress. Now they need 60 votes to pass it. They only have 53 seats. That's part of the problem. Polarization. The parties are more ideologically pure, less willing to compromise. The base punishes deals. The shutdown signals we stood our ground. Except for you're hurting 40 million people. Low cost to the instigators, at least. When you know you're eventually going to get paid back, and when public attention is short, like TikTok short, the political downside can be limited. Some armchair analysts call it pay-to-play dysfunction. And then we have a systematic design flaw. The annual budget process, fragmentations across 12 bills, reliance on stopgap, continuing resolutions, all create built-in pressure points. With such a high risk of missing deadlines, shutdown becomes, inevitable. The net result: shutdowns are less about genuine crisis and more about power games. And more they occur, the more normal they become. Let's illustrate this. In 2018-2019 shutdown, the cost of the economy was at least $11 billion. And while federal workers eventually got paid, many still suffered. Missed rent, lost overtime, stress, and the government's reputation not exactly enhanced. Let's bring this all to real life. Imagine you're a national park ranger. The funding bill expires. Next morning, gates are closed. Visitors turn away. The concession staff sent home. Your paycheck still says federal employee, but arrives later. Or imagine you're in an airport. Air traffic controllers are essential, right? So you show up. But you're working without being paid. While your buddies, the admin assistant, get sent home. Meanwhile, flights get delayed. Data releases paused. Government contractors lose money. Private businesses ripple. The media fixates on shuttered monuments and angry tourists, but the underlying story is this. The state, which is supposed to function continuously, just pressed the pause button, and the button hasn't been broken, but it has to be used again and again and again. We keep hitting the pause button over and over and over again. So where are we now? The shutdown tools, they're sharpened. The back pay guarantee is in place. The players know the script. And the stakes, both for politics and the economy, are higher than ever. What does this say about our system? Perhaps that the government isn't designed solely to govern. It's designed to negotiate, to threaten, to pause. The shutdown becomes part of our governance. So when someone says, how can the government stop working and still get paid? The answer is, it learned how to. We let it. Learn through legal options, budget deadlines, political dysfunction. And for the rest of us, the cost is more than fiscal. It's trust. Continually losing trust in our government. We lose our trust in their reliability. We lose trust in their ability to do their job. When the state takes a break, citizens pay. Not just in taxes, but in uncertainty. By November 1st, if the government's not opened, and unless they do something crazy for the people, food stamp benefits run out. There are none. Now, I'm not a big proponent for everyone getting food stamps, but what they're estimating is 40 million children will lose food stamp benefits. Not voters, children. I'm not a big fan of that. Now, I'm also not a big fan of the government not caring or the government thinking that they can do whatever they want. As a veteran, I've gone without pay during government shutdowns. As a husband and a father, I've seen what that's done to my family and to me. The stress of not knowing when you're going to get paid is big on a lot of people's minds. When you're in the military or a government worker and you're told you're essential, but you can't afford your rent or your mortgage or your car payment or groceries for your family, and you can't apply for help because the government shut down, so that doesn't work, what are you to do? I know guys right now who are working full-time without getting paid, plus driving DoorDash and doing other odd jobs to keep food on the table for their families. We should not have soldiers out there in the world or government employees out there in the world who have to work a second job because they're too essential to not work and get unemployment, but they're also not essential enough to get paid. Congress people get paid. Good for them. They passed the bill. They made sure they get paid. The onus is on us. We are the ones who elected these people into office. I'm tired of all of them. I have said this before and I'll say it again. Term limits, I think, has to happen. Because these guys in DC, some of them, Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, these people, Chuck Schumer, these guys have been in power for longer than I've been alive, some of them. And they've been in power through dozens of government shutdowns, government destruction of people's lives. And they don't care anymore about us. There was a No Kings protest this weekend. A lot of politicians went to him. You know, Donald Trump is thinking we're afraid. No, if he was a king, he would shut it down. He didn't. Don't always agree with him. But a No Kings protest happening and no one getting arrested by the federal government, no one getting dragged out of the street, no one getting run over by a tank like happened in Tiananmen Square, that proves we don't have a king. The government being shut down right now proves we don't have a king because he would just open it. So while I don't agree with him all the time, he's not a king. He's a president. He doesn't always do the best. He doesn't always say the best things. But the people in power, the Congress, the Senate needs 60 votes. There's 53 Republicans. They need 60. So until they get 60, we're here. For good, for bad, for ugly, we're here. We're surviving off of hope that they'll get their heads out of their butts and do the right thing. Till next time, thank you for watching.